Most people think living a long life is about luck, good genes, or the right diet. I used to think that too. But after watching almost everyone I grew up with disappear one by one, I learned that the thing that shortens most lives isn't something you eat or drink. It's something people carry around every single day. My name is Samuel, and I'm 102 years old. I was born in 1924 in a small farming town where the roads were mostly dirt, and everyone knew the sound of everyone else's footsteps. When you live this long, you watch the world change in ways that are hard to explain to younger people. I've seen horses disappear from the streets, radios become televisions, and those televisions become little glowing rectangles people carry in their pockets. I've seen wars begin and end, presidents come and go, cities grow where fields once stretched for miles. But the most powerful lessons didn't come from history books or big events. They came from ordinary days, quiet mistakes, and people I loved who didn't make it as far as I did. When I was a young man in my 20s, I believed life was a race. I believed you had to run harder than everyone else. Work longer hours. Prove something to the world. That belief followed me for a long time. I worked at a machine shop when I was 27. The owner was a man named Harold. He was only about 15 years older than me, but he carried himself like a man twice his age. Always tense. Always rushing. If a small problem happened, he treated it like the end of the world. If a customer complained, he would walk around the shop muttering to himself for hours. Back then, I thought that was what responsibility looked like. Serious men worried. Serious men carried the weight of everything. But something happened one winter that I never forgot. Harold collapsed at his desk one afternoon. Heart attack. He was 42. I remember standing outside the shop with the other men while the ambulance took him away. It was snowing lightly. Nobody said much. We just stared at the tire tracks in the snow. The next morning the shop opened again. Work continued. Machines hummed like always. But Harold never came back. At that age, you don't think about what it means. You just say to yourself, "That's sad," and then you move on with your day. But over the years I started noticing something strange. The people who seemed to age the fastest were not always the ones with the hardest jobs or the worst health. It was the ones who lived in a constant state of tension. The ones who worried about every small problem as if the sky might fall. My older brother Thomas was like that. Thomas was a good man. Honest, hard-working, devoted to his family. But he had a habit that followed him everywhere he went. He worried. If the weather looked strange, he worried about the crops. If the crops looked good, he worried about the price. If the price was high, he worried about the next season. His mind was always living 3 problems ahead of the present moment. I remember one summer evening when we were both in our 50s. We were sitting on his porch watching the sun go down over the fields. It was one of those quiet evenings when the air feels warm and the world finally slows down. But Thomas wasn't watching the sunset. He was talking about next year's fertilizer costs. I said to him, "Tom, look at that sky. You might as well enjoy it." He barely glanced up. Then he went right back to worrying. My brother died at 68. I stood at his funeral thinking about that sunset. Thinking about how many evenings like that he must have spent somewhere else in his mind. And over time, I began to notice the same pattern everywhere. Friends who could never let go of their worries. Men who carried every disappointment like a heavy suitcase. People who replayed old arguments for years. People who expected disaster even on good days. They aged quickly. Their shoulders tightened. Their faces hardened. Their laughter disappeared first, and then eventually they did too. It took me a long time to understand what I was really seeing. The habit that shortens most lives is constant worrying. Not the normal kind of worry that helps you solve a problem. I'm talking about the habit of carrying problems long after they should have been set down. The habit of filling your mind with things you cannot control. I didn't realize I had this habit myself until I was in my 60s. One evening my wife Margaret found me sitting at the kitchen table staring at a stack of bills. I had been there for almost an hour, thinking about everything that might go wrong in the future. She walked over, poured 2 cups of coffee, and sat down beside me. Margaret had a quiet way of seeing things clearly. She looked at me and said, "Sam, you've been solving problems your whole life. But tonight you're just feeding them." That sentence stayed with me. Feeding them. I realized that most of my worrying wasn't actually solving anything. It was just giving energy to things that might never happen. The next morning I made a small decision. It didn't feel important at the time, but it changed the rest of my life. Whenever a worry appeared in my mind, I asked myself one simple question. Is there something I can do about this right now? If the answer was yes, I did it. If the answer was no, I let it go. At first it wasn't easy. Worry is a stubborn habit. The mind likes to circle the same problems again and again like a dog walking around its bed. But slowly, something surprising happened. Life began to feel lighter. The same problems still existed. Bills still arrived. People still disappointed me. The world still went through difficult times. But I stopped carrying everything at once. And that made room for something else. Peace. Over the years I watched friends younger than me grow tired and bitter because they refused to let go of the endless weight in their minds. They believed worrying meant they cared more, or that it meant they were being responsible. But the truth is, constant worry quietly drains the life out of you. It steals your sleep. It tightens your chest. It turns ordinary days into heavy ones. And the cruelest part is that most of the things people worry about never even happen. When Margaret passed away 15 years ago, I spent many evenings sitting alone on the porch of this old house. At first the silence felt unbearable. But then something interesting happened. I remembered all the evenings I had once spent worrying about things that no longer mattered. Deadlines. Arguments. Small disappointments that seemed enormous at the time. And I realized how little space those things deserved in a life. If you are listening to an old man who has seen more than a century of days, I want you to understand something simple. Your mind was not meant to carry the entire future. It was meant to live in the day you're standing in. Problems will always exist. That's part of being alive. But the habit of holding on to every possible problem is like walking through life with a sack of stones on your back. Most people never put the sack down. And that is why they grow tired long before their time. Now, at 102 years old, my days are quiet. I wake up early, make my coffee, and sit by the window where the morning light reaches the floor. Sometimes I think about the people who walked through my life and the lessons they left behind without even realizing it. Harold with his endless stress. My brother Thomas with his constant worrying. Margaret with her simple wisdom at the kitchen table. They all taught me the same truth in different ways. Life is long enough if you stop fighting battles that exist only in your imagination. So if you truly want to reach old age with a clear mind and a steady heart, there's one habit you must let go. Stop carrying tomorrow's problems through today. Because the years move quietly, and one day you'll look back and realize the best moments of your life were happening while you were busy worrying about something that never came.